All right. I'm really excited to talk to Relic in Texas.
I agree, and we still need a couple more callers. It's still early on in the show. If you want to call 585-526-8774, we'd love to hear from you, or tiny.cc/callsg. Let's talk to Relic in Texas.
All right. Relic.
Relic, it says that today you want to talk about the problem with evangelism. Is that right?
Yes, sir, it is. Hi, Eric and V. I'm glad to be talking to y'all again.
Absolutely.
I want to apologize because I didn't congratulate you two on your engagement.
Well, thank you. That is okay. It's been a couple minutes.
I know. Last time I saw you on Talk Heathen, y'all weren't an item, and now you are. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm going back through all these backlogs on Skeptic Generation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they got engaged.
Yes,
yeah, we did. In fact, my mom and dad flew down and got to meet V this last week. It's been a really, really nice week.
Yes, it's been amazing.
Yeah, but we live together. We're renting a home together. We're doing the show together out of that home, and it's really good. So thank you very much. I love that, we do have people who are still religious, who are rooting for us, who are wishing us the best. Relic, the fact that, we may not agree on everything, it makes me extra happy to see that you want to see us well. I feel like that's the kind of engagement I want to see more of. So I'm really touched by that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's actually part of the reason I'm trying to call in.
Yeah.
Something I've noticed, and you could take this as just my experience. I'm sure, Eric, because you read the comments, you might have seen a couple of my spats with some of the community.
Possibly. I'm not sure. I think my mental health protects me in that I will read it and then I will promptly forget about it soon after. So I don't ruminate too much. What I'm really looking for mostly is ways to improve or places where I fucked up. So I need to make sure I apologize next episode. But
yeah, I get that.
Clue us in. What are your conversations about?
Yeah.
Okay, so 90% of the time, and I think that you would all agree, is that 99% of the time we agree on what's important. And there's that 10%, which is, on my behalf, I believe in spirits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's immediately cause for people to go, oh, he needs mental help.
Mm.
And so yes, I've seen some past calls on bro-atheism and all of these things, and I realize this isn't just something that happens with me. It's something that genuinely happens with communities on both sides of the fence. Whether you're a theist call-in show, you have the same issue with anybody who's atheist. You just sweep them under the rug. They're unwell. They don't believe what we believe. There must be something wrong with them, or they must be deeply unhappy.
Yeah, who hurt you? Who hurt you? You must be angry at your earthly father, and so you're taking that out on your heavenly father. That kind of, yeah.
Exactly.
What caused you to hate God so much you turned away from the faith?
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm not going to throw dirt at any other talk shows, but I want you to realize how advancing your show is and how important your show actually is, because you treat theists with respect to the same amount that they deserve to be treated, as long as they're being respectful and it's a two-way conversation. But you treat them with respect, and that's important.
Well,
and I can't stress that enough.
That's really touching. Thank you.
Yeah, honestly, the only way we're going to make any kind of progress at this point, I mean, here's the thing. There's always that point in a community's growth where they are small enough that they really have to yell and be loud in order to be acknowledged, right? And
Right.
It is a part of the process, regardless of who we're talking about. But we are actually at a point, at least in the United States, where atheism is no longer necessarily an underdog outside of maybe certain funding for certain politicians and government stuff. In the day-to-day life, as far as the population goes, we're quickly coming up on a sizable chunk. And so at this point, my take is that we need to stop being loud for the sake of being loud and have conversations with people, because that's the only way that we're going to learn how to coexist as two groups who have different ideas about how the world works. As long as we agree on 99% of things, and you're doing your thing and it's not impacting me, and I'm doing my thing and it's not impacting you, then we're good, man, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if there are kind of two different standards, though. One is, can we be allies? And that's exactly where you're at.
Yeah.
The other is the pedantic, getting really, really into the weeds. Are you being consistent in your epistemology? And, what are our axioms? How are we, approaching the world? And those arguments, a lot of the time, is navel gazing. And it's my favorite kind of navel gazing. I love it. And I will take up that navel gazing with anyone who wants to, because that is my favorite thing. But yeah, you're right. If we can be allies, fantastic. But I also don't want to lose track of where the most fun is for me. And that is the esoteric stuff. I want to challenge you, because if you have a belief about the world and I don't, one of us is wrong, and I really don't want to be wrong. Mm-hmm. And I also don't want you to be wrong. And so I get excited about it. And that's where I feel like that's where we go from there. But yeah, if we're going to just be shutting people down or, talking about their beliefs about the world as if they're mental health, number one, I think that trivializes mental health, and that does a disservice to neurodivergent communities. It's not fair. It's not okay. But also, it fundamentally misunderstands how something like faith tradition and religion can kind of ingratiate themselves into a society, and how it can shape the way that people epistemically approach the world. If your epistemology, if your toolbox is that much different than mine, it's no wonder that you come to different conclusions. That doesn't mean that I'm going to assume there's something wrong or something, that is broken about you.
Right.
Because that's just, it's just so condescending. So yeah, no, I got to agree. And just one last piece that I got to just drive in there. And that is, a lot of people have dealt with things like gaslighting in their lives. People being manipulated by people they trust and believing non-true things, and for people who have come out of abusive relationships or abusive situations where things like gaslighting happen, you didn't wind up in that situation because there was something wrong with you. You get trained, you get trained in that. And often, tools like that are used, and they're not used necessarily intentionally or maliciously, but passively. And you shouldn't be blaming a person for being, trained that way. The best you can do, though, is expose them to other thoughts, engage them, and hopefully maybe cultivate a passion for truth and for these kinds of topics. So anyway, I'm getting way off topic, but that's important to me.
Speaking of way off topic, I'm really curious, because maybe we just phrased this differently in the screening notes, but Relic, you called in specifically about the problem with evangelism, and I'm really curious how that ties into this.
Oh yeah, geez. Good call, V. I'm supposed to be hosting today. I didn't.
And I feel like everything you've said completely ties into it.
Yeah.
And here's my point. And once again, I'm not going to name shows, but everybody under the sun who is into skeptic communities and cares about these topics knows who I'm talking about. So I'm going to leave it perfectly vague. There are communities that breed this. And I'm talking about the evangelistic take on it. There are call-in shows to where it is pretty much, if you watch close enough, it is doctrine that if someone starts making too much sense, get them off the air, shut them down, push them away.
So I want to be more charitable than that. I want to be.
I understand that.
I want to be more charitable.
Are we
than
surprised?
that. And yeah.
Yeah.
V, do you want to go? Because you know where I'm going to go, and I'll be happy to say that afterward. But.
Yeah. So I think that on the one hand, you are absolutely correct in that a lot of the people who have come out of a Christian background were raised evangelical, at least within the last, few decades. And if that's the case, then a lot of the mindset of how to talk to people about these issues might not have gone away with the God belief, right? And I know I was guilty of that for the first few years of deconverting as well.
No, yeah, they're habits.
Right, where it's like, this is how you engage with people, right? You tell them that they're wrong, and you tell them what the real truth is. And it in some situations that is called for, absolutely. But it is worth taking that step back and saying, all right, if I just changed there is no God to there is a God, would I have a problem with how this person was, quote unquote, evangelizing, right? Mm-hmm. Is this a conversation, or is this, right, ambushing someone on the street with a megaphone and some cue cards? And I don't think that's helpful anymore, as I said. So I think a good practice for a lot of people is to take a step back and say, all right, I know how to evangelize. I'm good at it. I was trained how to do that. I'm really good at that. If I wanted to, I could. That's a skill set that was, banged into me. But is that the best option for communication right now based on what I want to embody, which is skepticism and, what is embodied by the street epistemology concept and this idea of having a conversation, and evangelism simply does not allow for that. And so I'm going to tone that back. I'll pull it out when I need it, but I'm going to tone it back until I deem that it's an appropriate use of a tool.
And there are appropriate uses for it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, poo-poo that. One of the things, Relic, do you believe in life after death?
Yeah.
You do. I don't. And so when I stopped believing, I needed to grieve twice. Mm-hmm. I grieved when that person died. And then I grieved again when I realized that I was never going to see them again. It hurt. It hurt really, really bad. It was really damaging. And being in the atheist community, being in the atheist community, I've talked to a lot of people who maybe didn't say their goodbyes the way they wish they could, because they were like, well, I'm going to see them in heaven. I'll get to see that, I'll get to repair that relationship then. And for someone who doesn't believe in a heaven, that opportunity is lost entirely.
Yeah.
And so to me, I see something very, very damaging, given what I just explained. I'm sure you could see why I would see it as damaging.
Of course.
And if I was talking about it and I were to say, one ought not to just accept that there's a heaven. I feel like it's selling you on something like saying, I'm going to give you $1 million at the end of the week. Oh, it sounds great until the end of the week comes. Did you get it? Oh, well, you're never going to find out. Well, crap. I feel like there's damage there, but when I talk about it, it comes off as evangelism. And I got to tell you, I feel like I want to live in a world where people treat this world like the fragile, fleeting
miracle that it really is.
In a secular way. Yeah. The fact that we're alive on this planet at all is the closest thing to a miracle that I can imagine.
Honestly, that made me so happy. That's the line that Jeff Goldblum had when he was on Hot Ones the other week. he just
really?
went for it. Yeah, I highly recommend watching that interview specifically, because he had a beautiful way of saying that exact thing from a skeptical, secular standpoint, which was really cool to hear. But yeah, I think you're spot on as well. We live in a culture that, evangelism is a type of rhetoric. And a lot of the time when we get excited about a thing or, come down hard on a thing, it does the word people reach for is evangelizing, and not everything is. Some things definitely are, and you don't have to be a Christian to evangelize. That is not something that I would say. But at the same time, there are some times that people get really aggressive and excited and strong-willed about a topic.
Yeah, and in this case, the existence of a heaven. I'm really, really strong. I have strong opinions about the damage that I think it does.
But like, oh my gosh, this is a topic for a much larger conversation too, because if we're saying, well, I just think that the things that I see as actually harmful deserve that kind of treatment, well, then that's exactly what Christians are thinking, because it's what they see as really harmful that deserve that type of treatment. And we would call that evangelizing. So it's an interesting definition to use. Yeah. But the basic point that you're making, Relic, that we need to be more compassionate in how we listen to people. We need to be willing to prioritize conversations and be challenged if a rote answer that we are giving because other people have given it is being challenged effectively. That's exciting. Yeah, that should be something we look for, not something that we try and
you summarized it perfectly.
Yeah, and also I just kind of want to push back. There was a comment in the live chat that got me. Somebody said that that dogma is required for evangelism, and that's not the way that we're using that word. The way that we're using the definition of evangelism could include things like CrossFit. And we can argue about whether or not CrossFit has dogma, but when you're very excited about something or you're very passionate about something and you want to spread the word and you feel like you ought to, because you're either preventing damage or spreading well-being, then I would include that as a kind of evangelism.
Yeah.
If that helps for people in the chat who are scratching their heads.
Okay, so first of all, like I said, I completely agree with V's summary of what I was trying to speak about. And Eric, I completely get that loss of the afterlife and that second layer of loss that's just hitting me. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of these people that I thought I was going to get to see again, that I'd be able to make things right. Because I'm not going to lie, when I was an atheist, I have a lot of people that I probably ended on poor terms with that I would do anything to get moments back with.
Yeah.
And I get the solidarity that comes with hanging out with other individuals or with like-minded individuals who see the great lie, because it could be seen as a great lie, that like it's something that's meant to be a comfort drug. I do believe in it because of firsthand experiences on my end, but I can understand from anybody's secular perspective why they would believe what they believe, and they're justified in it. And I don't want to take that pain from anybody because it's a very real pain, and no one really has the answer. The thing I want to drive home is that with the evangelism itself, with pushing these ideas, you should never push an idea at the no matter what the cost label. You know what I mean? Without that, I'm going to push this. If someone says anything that's otherwise, they're clearly being dishonest. But if I had someone accuse me of having some sort of secret agenda to stir up the atheist community, which was probably the most hilarious conversation I've ever had in my life, where it would just be a back and forth shotgun battle of like, you have an agenda. What's my agenda? I don't know, but you have one.
Well, in that case, everybody does. The one thing that I do want to, I would love to get into an entire conversation around the concept of when do we pull back from an idea because it is no longer practical or would result in harm. Because I think that that's a really interesting topic that we actually covered a little bit with Chaos earlier in the show when they called in about antinatalism. But I do think that that is a huge topic for another day. In the meantime, though, Relic, bottom line, you are a good interlocutor as far as I have seen. I enjoy talking with you. We don't agree on everything, but that's why we have these conversations, right? If we agreed on everything, there would be nothing to talk about.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Relic, thank you for calling in.
Thank y'all for having me, as usual.
Take care. So there's something I kind of want to talk about real quick before we get into the next call.
Absolutely. Wolfo, stay on the line.
Okay. So there's this idea that if we don't challenge someone consistently, that we're not doing them any favors. And I've heard that pretty regularly. And I kind of want to give that a little bit of context. So I remember the very first time I sat down with Dean Meadows. Dean wanted to set himself apart from a lot of other apologists, because Dean's an apologist, who were really, really pessimistic, negative, made a lot of poor assumptions about atheists, made a lot of judgment calls. All atheists really do believe in their heart. They just hate God, or there's no way that we could, work together towards a common good.
Right.
And so the first time we sat and talked, especially in front of a camera, we were eager to find those common ground pieces, not because of, we did it so that we could counteract the negativity we've seen. And people sometimes look at that and think, well, you're not doing any favors. You're not actually challenging their ideas. No, we're laying a groundwork that we can build from there. And after that, we do continue to challenge each other's ideas.
Yeah.
But you do need to take into consideration the context of where you are. If you think that you should challenge every single idea every single time, that is a privileged life that not all of us get. So that's fantastic that you have that privilege. I wish we all did. But until we all do, the expectation that we all must doesn't work.
Yeah. And there's also there are a lot of social politics involved in that as well, right? You brought up the idea of privilege there, and not to get all on my woke high horse or whatever, but the idea that there is one way to confront somebody, and that is aggressively and take no nonsense, is not available to a large portion of people because of the stigma around doing so while being a woman, or while being Black, or while
being Mexican.
Right. So there are also things to consider there. If I am more gentle in the way that I engage with somebody, a lot of it is just because I don't see a need to be angry unless, something provokes me. But also, it's because I've been socialized to engage in that way for my own safety. And because if I get loud and aggressive, I get made into a meme and, shared on right-wing Twitter as, look at these, woke babies who are scared and crying about everything. So there's other things to consider as well. If you don't like the way one person confronts other people, that's fine. You do you, 100%. We need that. Whatever it is, we need that. But at the same time, be considerate and don't make snap judgments about other people.
Yeah, I've been spoken over so that people could white knight for Latino issues. Like, stop it. Stop it. But moving forward, I do want to challenge that finding common ground, or especially pointing out places where you're finding that there isn't common ground, and developing those is beneficial. So kiss our asses. Next.
Speaking of not being aggressive, kiss our butts.
Honestly, there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And
no.
We have so many different things, so many different callers, so many different, strategies and viewpoints that we're trying to roll with the flow. And there's a time and a place. And you better believe that if we have those callers again, we are going to want to challenge them. But finding where there are issues like that and kind of resolving them is important too.
Yeah. Someone says you don't need to be aggressive if you have the facts. Ugh, I hate that line of reasoning so much. I get where you're coming from, but the idea that aggression means you are not backed up by evidence is also not accurate, because you can both be emotional about the fact that those facts are being ignored or contradicted and have the facts on your side.